Origin Unexplained.
Welcome to Origin Unexplained. I am Sue, your host, and tonight we are going to visit my haunted journals. Back in 2004, I decided to have ghostly journals with strange activity that was taking place in my old house and in this one. If you look at the picture, you will get an idea of the house I lived in, because that's it. So without any further ado, let's do some reading out of the journals of all the ghostly activity. After all, it is October. Strange happenings in fall of 2004. While sitting at my desk getting ready for a DJ gig, I heard a banging on the door and the dogs were barking. I asked Bud, my older son, who was here. I didn't want any company as we were getting ready to leave. And he came into where I was looking white as a ghost. He said the cellar door was rattling and banging on its own. I ran into the kitchen with my camera, but got no photos. The dog still staring at the door, and no one else was in the house. There have been many episodes prior to this where there has been banging in the house and no one is here. It usually occurs upstairs. At one time, my friend Barry was here. It was in May of 2003 to be exact. When the two of us heard a loud crash, I looked upstairs, but there was nothing displaced. He made me go outside to see if ice had fallen, but I told him there isn't ice on the house in May, not even in New York. I still went out as he begged me to, but like I said, no ice in May. Jumping into February 2005, and the dates will get better and the stories will get much better, trust me. I had gone to bed as it was getting late. Just as I fell asleep, I jumped up to get out of bed. Roger asked, "What's wrong?" I said, "A spirit guide wanted me to go blow out a candle." I was hardly awake when I said that, but I went downstairs and sure enough, there was a candle that was lit. So now we're going to jump forward to July 23rd, 2005, 9:35 p.m. Chris, my son, was alone and heard banging upstairs. No one was here, though. The full moon was 2 nights ago. Saturday, September 3rd, 2005, it was 9:30ish. Seth and I got into a discussion about how he acts. He started talking about hearing footsteps at night and ghosts in his room while he was in bed. I had him draw me a picture. He drew 2 ghosts, a female above his bed flying upwards that is supposed to be a young girl, and a man ghost standing there. I set up ghost cameras in search of something. I also turned on the tape recorder to see if I could hear anything. While watching the monitor downstairs, I saw typical orbs, then a brighter one that went across the length of his ceiling. He yelled down, "Mom, did you see the ghost?" I didn't say yes at first. I asked him to point where he saw it. And in big letters it says, he pointed the entire length of his ceiling where the orb flew until it was out of the camera's view. I couldn't believe he saw what none of us could. This was not a typical orb. It had white all around it. I then went up and told him to talk and ask questions out loud to it, meaning the ghost. He asked a couple times who the ghost was, etc. Well, upon playing the tape back, I was shocked, in big letters. At the first part of the tape, Seth asked, "What is your name?" The ghost's reply was, and I can still hear it to this day, "What is your name?" About 10 minutes later, when Seth wasn't asking any questions, there is a distinct male voice saying, "Find your game." It's been missing since morning. Later on, I asked Seth to ask it its name, but he got confused and just said, "Ghost." And there was a distinct male voice saying, "What?" And then I wrote, "I will be doing more investigations into this as time goes on. As far as the moon phases go, this occurred on a new moon and the geomagnetic storms were high at the time. Hang with me, it gets good. January 9th, 2006. Here we go. Bud went to sleep, and around 4ish in the morning, he said he woke up to hearing Major, the dog's toenails, clicking on the floor. He said when he looked up, there was a black cloaked figure with no face standing 3 feet from behind his head. He said he called Major, the family dog, to hurry up and get on his bed. He said the dog walked right through the black figure. He said he could even see the hair of the figure, but it had no face. It was black air where the face should have been. He then said after the dog walked through it, he noticed that it turned around and slowly glided out of his room into Seth's room. It was about 5 days before a full moon. Now the story behind that is he pulled out a Ouija board that was given to me a couple Christmases prior to that was never open. I just stuck it in the bookshelf. He opened it up, helped himself while his friends were there on New Year's Eve, and I was out DJing. And he said, "I don't believe in you. You're not moving anything. Why don't you show yourself?" Well, it did. Waited for 9 days and showed itself, right? And that's the last time Bud ever played with one. Saturday, January 14th, 2006, Roger and I slept downstairs, and he said around 3 a.m. he thought he heard someone upstairs walking. The dog was downstairs, and no one else was here but us. It was a full moon out also. Saturday, April 2006, I went upstairs to take a nap around 1 p.m. After I first fell asleep, I felt someone ping my nose, and what I mean by ping, I remember all these things, by the way. Pulling your middle finger back with your thumb and snapping somebody, it pinged my nose. I snapped awake quick and then fell back to sleep. I kept hearing noises and little movements in the bedroom. I finally spoke out loud and said, "Yes, I know you're here." Then all of it stopped. Full moon in July of 2006. When I was in the kitchen, I felt a small hand push against my leg, and it tipped me a little to the left. I looked down expecting to see Dakota, but no one was there. Again, July 2006. Dakota came and slept with us as it was hot in her room. She looked at where the closet was and covered her eyes and kept peeking out at nothing. She also does that when she is being shy towards a man or is scared. I told Roger to look at her, and he watched also. I then turned my back toward the closet and said out loud, "Get out of here, you're scaring my baby." She instantly uncovered her eyes. September 2006, full moon time again. There was a loud bang upstairs, and no one was up there. January 16th, 2007. At 8:30 p.m., while snoozing on the couch with Dakota, and nobody else was here, except for Seth upstairs, Seth came down the stairs and said, "Mommy, there's a ghost upstairs." He said while he was in the spare bedroom, he looked through the doorway adjoining the two rooms and saw something small on the floor. He described it as being white with just his head showing. Where the eyes and mouth were, there were just dark holes. He said it was turned sideways and then it looked directly at him. And it was a new moon out. All right, let's turn some pages here. August 8th, 2007. While we were camping, Bud was home alone. He said he felt someone touch his foot while he was laying down on the couch. He also said that he could hear people talking downstairs at one point. He said that he listened careful and something said, "Shh." The voices are coming from the living room when he was upstairs. Sometime between August 17th and the 28th, I started to hear about 3 people talking downstairs. Now, this is me. They were all talking at the same time. I didn't think about it, that Bud had mentioned the voices too, because I was thinking it was people outside that I was overhearing. This has happened a couple of times within a few days. After I talked with Bud, I recalled the voices stopped once I started coming down the stairs. I could not make out what they were saying, but I could clearly hear a man talking with a couple of people. August 26th, same year. When we went to bed, Roger asked me if I was shaking my leg. I said no. He said the bed was shaking. As I laid there, I could feel the bed slightly shaking from side to side. I thought there was a slight tremor going on, but nothing else was moving. You know, that really strikes me as bizarre because I don't recall that one. And we have that here at this house. Oh boy. The next day, August 27th, once again we went to bed and Roger asked me what I just said. I replied I didn't say anything as I was going to sleep. As he was going to sleep, someone whispered in his ear. October 5th. That's tomorrow, actually. But this is in 2006. It was around 12 a.m. and Dakota is still up. I could not figure this out. I went to her room to put clothes away and she looked towards her light, acted scared, and ran out of the room. She peeked around the door near that area and acted odd. I got chills and left the room. Then we went to my bed in my room. Now, Dakota was 2 at the time, so. Around December 1st, not exact date, I went to go to bed and take Dakota up also. I took her up. As we got to the top of the stairs, she looked around the upstairs hall and went to turn around quick to go back downstairs. She seemed to be scared of something. I told her no and told her to come to bed, and she ran as fast as she could into Seth's room to get away from going into our bedroom and down the hallway leading to it. I picked her up and carried her into our room. She buried her face in my neck. Once in the bedroom, she was fine and told her to come here, and she buried herself under the bedspread to avoid looking at the hall. December 8th, 4 a.m. I fell asleep on the couch. I suddenly was jolted awake and sat right up quickly. I thought Roger woke me up, but he was in bed upstairs. So I thought I heard the TV blaring upstairs in the bedroom. I decided this because it was 4 a.m. I better get my rear end up to bed. As I started to head to the stairs, I could hear the TV loudly upstairs. I could hear the lady's voice talking really loudly and a bunch of buzzing voices behind hers, as if being in a shopping mall. I started to get cranky because he had the TV so loud. As I went up the stairs, he must have heard me coming because he lowered the TV. Once I reached the top of the stairs, he had it turned down so low it almost sounded like whispers. I could not figure out how he could even hear the TV now because it was so low. So I finally made my way to the bedroom. The lights were off, and so was the TV. I quickly turned the light on and asked why he shut the TV off, because he leaves it on all night. He looked dazed and said, "It was never turned on." I about shit myself. I actually wrote that. I clearly heard a lady talking loudly and a bunch of voices behind her mumbling. What woke me up so quickly if it wasn't there? December 9th, the next day. The day started out normal. However, as I sat at the computer, I kept feeling someone behind me. It was as if I was paranoid. At any rate, Roger was napping, and around 4 p.m., he opened his eyes and saw a girl around the age of 8 standing over him. She had reddish hair, and it was longer. He described her wearing a checkered dress. He said she had a blank look on her face, not angry nor happy. She was only there for a split second, standing over the couch. He closed his eyes and went back to sleep. I sure wouldn't be sleeping if I saw that. Christmas Day, December 25th, 3 days after the full moon. It was around 12:30 a.m. and everyone was sleeping. I was watching TV while laying in bed. I swore I saw the canopy drape over our bed move. It was right below where Roger's feet were. There was no way it was him. Shortly afterwards, I swore I saw something move past in pretty much the same area. Sunday, February 24th, I'm assuming this is 2007. We went to bed. and after everyone was asleep, I thought I saw the canopy near Roger's feet move. Then as I laid in bed a few minutes later, I looked for a brief moment, and someone was standing near the same area, but closer to the bedroom door. February 25th. I fell asleep on the couch. At 1 a.m., Roger came downstairs and said he was awakened by a bang, a couple of them, actually. He thought it was Seth or Dakota, but they were sleeping. So I went back up with him to bed. He went to sleep right away. As I laid there, I heard what sounded like someone rustling through things. I turned the bedroom TV off to listen closer. I tossed and turned, and then I thought I heard those typical voices talking again. Bud, Seth, and I have all heard them. I tapped Roger, but he said he didn't hear it. I personally think he wasn't listening, as he was tired and snoring before he even finished his sentence while talking to me. I then thought I heard talking again, but dismissed it. I closed my eyes, but wasn't asleep. I started to hear clear, distinct male footsteps. The sound of a man in boots was what it sounded like. I woke Roger again, but he fell back to sleep instantly. I yelled into Seth to go back to bed, but knew it wasn't him. They were clear, distinct male footsteps. I started to finally snooze after a while and was awoken by a huge bang, the same bangs we have heard in the past. At this point, I insisted we go check things out. I yelled out loud, "Get out of here before I come down there with this gun and blow your head off." I knew no one was there, but felt better yelling out. Roger and I went downstairs, and no one was there. April 13th, 2008. Roger and I had a disagreement, and he went out for a bit. While he was gone, I swore on 2 different occasions that I heard footsteps upstairs. Early in the morning, I swore I heard people talking also, but I'm not quite sure. April 19th, 10 a.m. We set up the infrared cameras upstairs, and Kayla and I were watching, and a body appeared for a brief moment in front of Bud's old bedroom door. That was definitely a man, by the way. August 21st. For the last couple of days, things have been odd. Little noises, etc. August 28th. This morning was the clincher, though. It was around 5:45 a.m. and I was in the shower. I felt someone grab my finger through the shower curtain. I thought it was Roger, so I looked out and no one was there. I then started hearing banging and assumed Roger was awake downstairs. My back was turned towards the water spout. I felt something cold, which almost felt like an arm wrap around my lower back. I turned around and no one was there. Finally, I get out of the shower. I am bending down to dry off, and I hear footsteps walking up behind me. At that point, I started talking to the ghost to leave me alone, and then I had no problem. Now, I'm going to tell you, there was only about 3 feet between me and the window, so there was no way anybody could be walking behind me. Needless to say, I went in the bedroom to get dressed, and guess what? Roger was sound asleep. A couple of nights prior to all of this, I was downstairs, and I thought I heard noises behind me by the fish pond that I had in the house. I assumed the fish were making noise. Yeah, right. I then went out into the kitchen to make a snack to take upstairs. As I walked out and went to shut the light off, there was a loud bang behind me. I passed it off as maybe the mop had fallen down. I then went up the stairs and felt the entire way up that something was rushing me up the stairs. I got to the top, rounded the corner to my bedroom, and it felt like a cat tripping me up around my ankles. We have no cat. August 31st. It was around 4:30 p.m. and Dakota and I came in the house after shopping. Dakota ran out into the kitchen with her new toy and came running out and whining and heading up the stairs saying, "Ghost! Ghost!" I stopped her and asked her, "What?" She said a ghost was in the kitchen and it was standing through the table. I grabbed her hand to come down and show me where. She fought me at first, but insisted I get rid of the ghost. So I said out loud, "They better leave us alone and get out of my kitchen." It must have left because she walked in the kitchen and showed me where the ghost was standing on the table. I assumed it was standing through the table and not on it. Beginning of November 2008. Around 5 p.m., Roger's mom was here, and Seth came downstairs to tell us Dakota was sleeping in her toy box. So we went upstairs to check on her. Luckily, her toy box is a material thing and not a box. We found her head in the toy box, and she had it tipped down on the floor. And she was sleeping. I brought her downstairs. Then when she woke up, I asked her why she was in there. She said that the ghost came through the wall behind her toy box, so she hid from it. November 21st, 2008. Dakota's 4 at the time, by the way. Dakota ran upstairs to go to bed and came right back down after dropping her toys at the top of the stairs. She came to get me to go look at the ghost. She kept saying it was kicking a blanket, and she showed us how it looked. She said it was by her bed in her room. Well, her mattress is now in our room because of the ghost. I went up the stairs, and Roger went up too because she was persistent. She walked behind me with her head in my back of my shirt, literally under my shirt. I snapped some pictures, and sure enough, in the first photo, there were a ton of orbs in her room, and then none after that. St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2009. Dakota came downstairs saying there was a ghost in her bedroom, and it was a man. I eventually went upstairs with my camera, took a few pictures, and nothing was in them. I finally asked it out loud why it would scare my kid, and if it didn't stop, I would have someone exorcise it out of the house. At that moment, a weird loud noise came right up behind me, so Dakota and I ran down the stairs. I remember that very well. It sounded like somebody was like a skateboard, like somebody was riding a skateboard or something. It's the only way to describe it, on a wooden floor, like almost plank sounding. So I picked her up with one arm and flew down the stairs with her. I was really worried that, it was going to like trip us up or something. And God forbid, I'm glad I never pulled her arm out of socket the way I had her held up in the air. Moving back on here, March 18th. I set up the infrared monitors upstairs. It went off a couple of times. March 19th, 2009, once again, the monitor went off. Oops, back to March 18th, 2009. It was around 9 p.m. and I had the music going, a pinch too loud. Then there was a really loud bang, bang, bang. Roger told me to answer the door. No one was there, nor had they been around. Then again, it didn't sound like a knock on the door. September 6, 2010. It's Labor Day, so I got up around 6 a.m. to shower as we were headed to water safari. While taking a shower, I heard bangs and noises downstairs, and no one was up yet. There has been banging here and there throughout the house for the last year, but nothing real exciting. St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2011, 3:38 a.m. I got woke up by 2 loud bangs on the side of the bed. Now, we had a huge canopy bed, but there was 2 loud bangs. It seemed to shake the entire bed. I covered my head and told it to leave us alone. May 12th, 2011, 3 days before the full moon. Around noonish, I went up to bed to take a quick nap. Within 2 minutes, a huge bang happened. Bianca, my pug, who was up there with me, started barking. May 14th, 1 day before the full moon. While in the shower, I kept feeling a cold touch on my leg in the calf area. I kept thinking, oh, the shower curtain is touching me. Finally, I looked down while it was happening and I simply said, I know you are here and leave me alone. March 18th or 19th, 2012. During the middle of the night, I thought someone was pushing down on my stomach. In my dream, I kept thinking it was the ghosts. Granted, this isn't my typical story and there may be no truth to it, but it sure felt it. For the last year, Dakota has been saying there is a ghost that looks like it has 3 points on its head. She describes it being white with no face. She says it is holding on to something. I know she isn't lying because I can tell. She claims it seems to bounce around rather than walk. I know years ago I caught something on the infrared camera that didn't walk. It jiggled, kind of like gel. If anybody remembers a cartoon of Gloop and Gleep back in the 70s, it was like that. Most recently, she thought the bumps on its head may be ponytails. The picture taken back in the 90s of my ghost that resides here looks like it was, or had, ponytails. I had a hard time reading that. Friday, March 30th, 2012. While in the shower, I heard a loud voice say one word near my ear and loudly, but I couldn't decipher what it said. That ghost loved bothering me in the shower. Saturday, March 31st, went into the shower and clearly heard it banging downstairs, yet no one was here. I then heard a group of people talking downstairs. Again, no one was here though. March 31st, 9 p.m., I tried to help cross these ghosts over and I felt a cold breeze near my face. November 2012, evening. Early in the month, Dakota came running downstairs saying while she was in the bathroom, the ghost was banging the door open and closed. November 16th at 7:20 a.m. The front door opened and Seth asked me who opened it. Then the infrared alarm in my desk room storeroom went off. Seth and I asked Roger if he heard it, but he didn't. Then 3 minutes later, the alarm went off again. It was as if the ghost walked in the front door, into the room, looked around, and then left again. November 19th, 2012, Dakota was getting ready for school, and I went to the closet to get her backpack out. She was watching me from the table as she ate her breakfast. I took it out, set it on the floor, and as I closed the door and reached down to get her backpack, it was gone. I figured I must have thrown it back in the closet. I tore the closet apart, and Dakota helped me, but it was gone. I finally gave up. As I walked into the living room, there lay her backpack in the rocking chair. Now, Dakota, I wrote now in big letters. Dakota didn't see the backpack float by. It was as if it went invisible and reappeared elsewhere. October 23rd, 2013. Dakota went to bed, came downstairs screaming and crying. She said there was a shadow of a man walking down the hall towards Bud's old bedroom. He did not see her, he just kept walking. I presume a residual haunting. She seemed really upset that it was a full-body apparition. July, August, and September 2013. Prior to the last incident, a lot of odd, bizarre stuff has been going on. I was probably too lazy to write about it. November 20th, 2013, 3 days after the full moon. Laying in my bed, Dakota claims she saw a ghost that looked like a twisted cigarette smoke that came out of the attic door. I commented it better go back upstairs. Late in the night, early in the morning, I heard what sounded like a loud creaking coming down the attic stairs, like footsteps. November 22nd, 2013, Bud said he saw a tall man just standing in the hallway in the same place Dakota saw that man walking towards his room. He said the guy was tall and just staring down. I remember that. He was panic-stricken over that. Up there in the middle of the hall. Now I have to describe what the hall looks like. It was like a C-shaped hall where you could look over the banister and look down the stairs. January 27th, 2014. Dakota came downstairs crying hard, saying she saw a bearded man in the bedroom near the attic door. She said he looked startled at her. He had a red beard. Okay, just to let you know that attic door was in my bedroom. I stopped writing in this for a while over the last year. Of course, there have been bizarre things I have heard, like walking upstairs, and I called Roger on the phone while talking with him, and there was a loud crash, and it was like the ghost did it because I was talking about it. January 2015. This year has been okay so far, but this January has brought about an odd event. Nacho was on the couch resting, that was my pug, one evening, and he took off the couch. He took right off in a violent manner, like someone walked in and went up the stairs. He ran snarling to the bottom of the stairs, barking, looking up, and then completely stopped barking and just stared up the stairs. One thing I forgot to mention last year, as I had lost this book for a while, was that Dakota and Bud both, within a couple of months of each other, saw a man upstairs in the hall. Bud described him as almost hippie looking. Oh, okay. So this is a different time. Bud must have saw two different guys. Or was from the 60s or 70s, in his 20s or 30s, he described him as being. Dakota did not describe this one, except to say he was in the hall walking towards the back of the house. It's in the same area where Kayla and I saw that guy in the door in front of Bud's old bedroom. Most recently, Thursday, February 19th, brought forth one of the most interesting things ever. I finally have history of this house. A man showed up to buy my old shelf, and with him, the guy that drove the truck. The guy with the truck grew up in the neighbor's house and said he remembered the LaPrairie family used to live here. And the one guy slit his throat upstairs. Upon searching the web with lots of friends, I was able to find out one of our ghosts as being named Francis J. Burgeon. I have papers printed out enclosed in here on the other page. There's also a picture right here in his wife Adeline LaPrairie. He had a 4-year-old daughter that died also. Francis's grandparents were from Ireland. So when I did EVPs in the house, I had a lot of Irish accents. All right. Besides that, I did a lot of EVPs. February 23rd, he, Francis in parentheses, has responded. Well, if it's not him, it's someone pretending to be. Tuesday, February 24th, Dakota came downstairs at 9 p.m. screaming and crying that she saw a man coming out of the bathroom and headed towards my bedroom. She said he looked at her with big eyes and his mouth opened. It appears he was just as shocked to see her as she was him. She refused to go to bed, so she slept on the couch until I went up to bed. Since I have communicated with him, it is obvious he is present. My EVPs have an Irish accent from him, and I also hear a child and a woman. So 3/7/15 through 3/8/15, so that'd be March 7th and March 8th. I was alone and on the computer. I felt what felt like feathers brush my right cheek. Not long after, I heard what sounded like a cough upstairs. It sounded like a child or a female. March 8th, 2015, early in the morning around 4:30 a.m., I got up yelling after I threw my back out the day prior. I was moaning and yelling as I tried to get up from the couch in pain. I clearly heard a man having a conversation upstairs. Once I stopped belly aching and whining, there's no more voices. Once I yelled out again, the voices started in again. May 18th, 2015. The dogs started barking and I heard a man yell, "Shut up!" And they did. It seemed to come from the downstairs entrance area. July 2nd, 2015. I was on the laptop at the kitchen table when I heard the hook lock lift up on my sitting room door. Sure enough, it was unlocked. So I had one of those like little hooks and it was open. December 2nd, 2015, there was something upstairs that sounded like metal hitting the floor in Bud's old bedroom. December 4th, 2015, I heard Roger's guitar string playing when no one was here. It was up against the table where there was no way any sound could have come from it. January 20th, 2016, a few days before the full moon. Roger awoke on the couch and saw a black mass next to him. The full moon is in 3 days. Full moon, January 23rd, 2016. I saw a shadow figure of a man that walked by in the kitchen and headed over towards the sink. But then Roger walked out into the kitchen, so it wasn't him. January 24th, 2016. Dakota came running back into the bedroom before even going to the bathroom, saying she saw the jiggly jelly-like ghost near the floor. She claimed it was colorful. January 2016. Hearing strange clicking noises in the bedroom. As soon as I sit up in bed or walk towards that direction, the noise stops. April 2017. I saw a tall male figure near the light switch outside of Dakota's door around midnight. So what happened? That was the last story in the journal from the old house. I always told the ghosts the moment that I moved in there, because I ghost hunted there years prior to moving in. I did not ever want to see them. But I came around with a clothes basket around the stairs, around, well, the hall. It was C-shaped, like I mentioned earlier. And he was standing right outside of Dakota's bedroom door near the light switch, and he must have been, my God, probably anywhere between 6'6" and 6'8". Very, 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 very tall. So now I'm going to add a couple of stories that were not in the journal before I close the podcast off. We were there about a total of 17 years, and a couple of years into first moving in there, one night Chris was walking into the bathroom, and on his way there, he stepped inside and realized he had saw his reflection as he was walking into the bathroom, and then realized there was no mirror there for him to see his reflection. He took and stepped back 2 steps and was out in the hall and looked at a girl who was looking down. She wasn't looking directly at him, but she was gliding towards him. And he said that he put up his fists and started swinging. That was it. She dissipated, and I guess he went to the bathroom. Also, let it be known that there was a time when I was doing early 1900 photos, and I had a high collar on, and I went to put a cameo pin in the top of the blouse, and I felt this overwhelming urge to rake it into my neck and just rake it back and forth, like I wanted to cut my throat open. And that, my friends, was absolutely crazy. Well, when I found the history on the house, I found out that Francis had slit his throat. Because I'll tell you, when I felt that funny urge to do that to myself, I threw that pin, and I threw it on the dresser and wouldn't touch it again. I thought something was wrong with the pin. Of course, at the time, I didn't know the history of Francis or even what ghost was in the house. All I knew was that there was a girl in the house because a picture had been taken of her prior. Another thing, Roger always had a thing about having his pants too low, so you always saw the top of his butt. You know, kind of the plumber thing, right? There were a couple times when he was in the kitchen and he said, "Hey," and then he would turn around and there was nobody there. Apparently something would poke his top of his butt crack. And he would yell to me, "Hey, hey, hey." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You're not here." I said, "No." He goes, "Were you in here?" I said, "No." He goes, "Well, something touched my butt." I would laugh at that. It happened a few times. And one day, it was summertime, I had on the hip hugger shorts. And I had the same thing happen while I was sitting at my desk. Another story. Upstairs in Dakota's bedroom, she said that the ghost literally picked up a book and threw it at her. Another thing, she always described this ghost, but it wasn't like a human. And she drew a picture of it. And we figured out by the way she was talking about it that it was probably a distillery that he had in the house, Francis. And another thing, one time Roger had all of our DJ speakers all hooked up and stuff. and he was blasting the music, and we had company at the time. And we all heard bang, bang, bang. And I went upstairs, nothing out of place. Came back downstairs, and then all of a sudden, all the plates in the cupboard started going shake, 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 shake. In only one cupboard. Can't explain it. At one point, Roger and I decided to change the doors on the closet and on the bedroom door and the attic door. And at the time, we hadn't put the doorknobs in. We'd just gotten the doors up. And Dakota would claim that she would see an eye looking through. She saw an eye twice that it was looking out at her. I'm like, that's odd. So I let my eyes go out of focus and I looked at the bedroom doorknob. And like she had seen in the past, it looked like a twirling wisp of smoke came through the closet doorknob, went up in the air, back down a little bit, and out the bedroom window. So, a lot's changed since I moved out of that house. I don't know. You know, the spirit of Francis, I tried to help it cross over. Everything didn't work. There was more going on there than I know. And he had a daughter also that had passed away of appendicitis. And she was 4 years old at the time by the name of Carolyn Ann. I don't have a picture of her anymore. She was a cute little girl. But so that, my friends, is the story of the first haunted house that I lived in. If you have a story or if you want to be in a podcast, make sure that you email us at originunexplained, and that's UNX, no E there, PLAINED, at gmail.com. Part 2 coming up from the Journal of This House. And if you thought the last one was creepy, you haven't heard anything yet.